Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here with us tonight for this annual event in honor of Katherine Min. My name is Rachel Hansen, and I'm a professor of literature and creative writing here at UNCA and director of our undergraduate creative writing program, where our students are working on many exciting projects with our fabulous faculty, and they are also publishing their own original creative works. So we're really excited for them and all the good things they're doing. If you ever want to come over and see what's up in CW, just let me know. We'd love to have visitors. And also, please come back here into this very room on October 20th at 7 p.m. for our prize-winning visiting writer, prize-winning poet, Torrin A. Greathouse. She's fabulous also. So I was not fortunate enough to meet Katherine Min when she was here with us, but I know that her impact on UNC Asheville was very great. She was well loved by her students, her colleagues, and the community, and her writing continues to impact the literary community and beyond. So this is a very special event, a special night, and again, thank you for being here. Tonight specifically, we are so pleased to kick off our English Department Visiting Writer Series in partnership with Malaprops, with an alumnus reading by the New York Times bestselling author, Sarah Addison Allen, as she launches her newest book, Other Birds. Here to introduce Sarah and to engage in conversation with her about her work is our own UNCA alumni author in residence, Wiley Cash, also a New York Times bestselling author, whom I'm very pleased to have as a colleague and a friend. We're so lucky to have Wiley Cash as part of our community, teaching our students and being such an active literary citizen. One thing I love about seeing Wiley in the hallways over in Carpenter Hall, where we have our English department, is his unbelievable energy, his kindness, and his enthusiasm for literature. Especially love those occasions when he hands me a book with pages marked to show me a bit of writing he found to be so brilliant and exciting that he couldn't wait to share it. He's very approachable, and we love having him here. We're so lucky. As many of you probably already know, Wiley Cash is the author of 4 novels, the founder of This Is Working, and the book's editor at the Assembly. He's been a fellow at Gatto and McDowell Colony, and he's here to talk to Sarah tonight. Let's also give him a welcome, and he will introduce her.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Rachel. I really appreciate those kind words, some of which are true. The truest is that I do just tend to hang out in the hall all hours of the day and night. So if you do want to visit Carpenter Hall, I'll be there. Maybe in my pajamas. Who knows? Come and find out. We'll talk literature together. It is a thrill to be here with Sarah, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about her. Not that you need to know anything that you don't already know. Sarah Addison Allen's novels have been translated into 30 languages, and millions of copies have been published around the world. There's an old saying in writing, don't bury the lead, so I led with that. She is the author of the 2007 breakthrough debut novel Garden Spells, followed by The Sugar Queen, The Girl Who Chased the Moon. She's one of those writers, you start saying the title and you hear people in the audience going, yeah. That one was my favorite. That one was my favorite. The Peachkeeper, Lost Lake, 2015's First Frost, and now, 7 years later, and available today, Other Birds. Sarah is a cancer survivor. She is an Asheville native and a longtime resident. She is a kind and generous person, and she is, excitingly, an alumnus of UNC Asheville. It is an honor to be here with you tonight. Sarah, thank you so much for joining us. So we'll start. I'm imagining that not everyone has read the book. Although some of y'all got here at 5, you were like, where's the books? You might already be on like chapter 5 or 6 by now. You're like, I'll be in my car with the AC running. Text me when she takes the stage. Can you tell us a little bit about this book?
Am I on? Okay, yeah, hi. This is my first book in 7 years. I took a long time off. Many of you who follow me on social media know I was away when my mom got very sick, and then my mom and my sister died within days of each other. And they have a little memorial seats over here, which I'm looking at them right now. But, after sort of the grieving process, I started getting back into the swing of things, and this is the book that came out of it. it's very personal in some ways because it does deal with some grief, but it also deals with what we hold on to and how to let go. So I am also very glad to see that people actually came and not just my dad. So thank you.
That is always the fear when you have a book event and you're like, is anybody gonna come? You know? And then you like look at the calendar and you're like, well, there's a PTA meeting tonight, so that's gonna leave some of the audience. And what's on TV? I don't know. So tell us a little bit about Other Birds.
Oh, wow. Well, it centers, well, it's my first book set on the coast of South Carolina, and it revolves around an apartment complex called the Wisp, and the residents of this very small complex. And when I say my inspiration was Melrose Place, it's not that, it's just this sort of encapsulated idea of people who would never associate with each other come together simply by living so close to each other. And they are all running away from something in a way, and they're all dealing with grief in their own way. And there's an invisible bird.
Perhaps one of the other birds, one could say. You know, your main character is a young woman named Zoe Hennessy. And can you tell us a little bit about Zoe, who she is, what she's leaving behind in Tulsa, and what she is hoping to find on the South Carolina coast? Why has she come to the Wisp?
Zoe she's leaving her home, and she's coming to live in an apartment that was left to her by her late mother, who died when Zoe was 7. And it is the summer between high school and college, and so she's at that time in life where she's finding herself and she's finding her independence. And I actually have a 19-year-old niece, so I was, she was secretly, side-eyed watching Hannah through her, college experience. She's looking for family, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And what she does is she finds family that she's not related to them, but she realizes that you don't have to be related to people in order for those people to be family.
Mm-hmm. And this is a place. There are a lot of misfits at the Wisp, and you mentioned Melrose Place, which was an interesting comparison that I hadn't thought of. But the Wisp becomes a character in the novel, and it reminded me, it's the kind of things I think about when I'm hanging out in the hallways of Carpin in the middle of the night. The Wisp kind of takes on the character, and I was thinking about Victorian novels, how the mansion kind of becomes a character, and there's a locked door mystery, or there's the staff as opposed to the aristocracy, and I'm thinking about Jane Austen and things like that. Did you set out to create the Wisp as a character, as kind of this central hub for all of these people, or is that something that just kind of happened?
Any book I start out with, I have to have a very real and concrete sense of place, and I think that's why, in some respects, my settings are characters in and of themselves, because it's literally the first thing I think of when I'm writing a new book. I have to know where it is. I have to know what it's about, and the characters and the stories grow from that cornerstone. So the Wisp was always there. Characters came and went, names changed, but the Wisp was always the Wisp.
Yeah. So what were some fun things you remember happening in your writing process and using place so consistently as a setting? There's instances where Zoe's like, here's something next door, or there's a bump in the night and she looks through the blinds, and then there's a resident who never comes outside, and there's all these different things. What was the process of, and this is maybe a question for the writers out there, what was the process of saying, I know I want it to be this setting, and then did you just kind of step back and say, I know Zoe's my main character, who's she going to meet, what is she going to get into?
She was my first character, and I found that she influenced the plot and who she met. But with all my books, actually, I have an idea of a main character, but the other characters sort of rise to be main characters as well. And I find in many books, in other birds as well, that although I love Zoe, I found that there are characters like Charlotte, who I found very intriguing, and Mac in particular, who lost the woman who raised him. I identified with him a great deal. So while Zoe in her innocence and her exuberance sort of brought everyone together and moved the plot, I think the other characters deserve sort of equal billing, because I think they became as important to the book as Zoe.
I agree. So Mac is a chef who lives in the Delawisp, and tell us a little bit about Charlotte, and then tell us a little bit about the two sisters who also live at the Delawisp.
Mac, the chef, he was raised by an old woman who was, I think she was around 100 when she passed away. And when she passed away making cornbread, and he found her, and she had cornmeal covered over her like snow. And from that point on, every morning Mac wakes up with a dusting of cornmeal on him, and it's the way he remembers her. It's sort of how he's keeping her to him. And so that was very personal to me in terms of the woman who raised him taught him to cook, and he's a chef, and my mom, food was love. And so Mac feeds people as an extension of love. And Charlotte is a girl on the run. She keeps to herself, and no one really knows her story. And she does not want to get close to anyone in this complex until Zoe comes in, and just by being her, just brightens up, like citrus, the whole area of the Delawisp. And slowly but surely they open up.
And Charlotte's under a lot of strain, early in the novel. She's got financial strain, she's got a lot going on, and so there's all these pressures. There's an old saying, not an old saying, but in creative writing classes, to steer your characters toward the rapids. And there's a lot of steering toward the rapids, especially with Charlotte. So can you tell us a little bit about the two sisters and the Delawisp as well?
Lucy and Lisbeth Lyme. And my late sister, we are not Lucy and Lisbeth Lyme, I'll say that right now. But the terms in which the tension of between the two, and there's a phrase I use, and Lisbeth says, in comparing herself to her sister, it's like trying to remember the meaning of a word, and you can't remember the meaning of the word, so you explain its opposite. And that's how she felt, always compared to her sister. This was the way Lucy was, Lisbeth's the opposite. They're both troubled sisters. One is a recluse and one is a hoarder. And at the beginning of the book, no spoilers, you read it in the first chapter, one of them dies, and that sort of sets the story going.
And that death really makes these very independent, kind of mysterious, reclusive characters. It kind of brings them all together, and that's really what gives the novel its momentum. One thing that I kept thinking about when I was reading this and marveling at is all of the genres that you managed to mash into this book. We have coming-of-age tale, there's magical realism, there's mystery, later on there are ghosts. Can you talk about it kind of embracing and probing those genres, and were you doing it consciously and saying, like, what do these offer me as a writer, or were you just kind of writing your way into these different things?
It's like a buffet. You have to try a little bit of everything, and that's what makes a buffet a buffet. You get all the tastes. I did set out to write, from my very first book, From Garden Spells, I didn't set out to write a book that was different genres that, sort of it all stirred up into a soup, sort of. I think it came naturally because I am influenced by everything I read, and I love all of these genres. And I did try. There's someone who actually brought my romance novel. My very first book was a Harlequin romance, and I thought that's what I was going to do. I was going to be a romance writer. And part of the reason I was not successful at that is because it wasn't my voice, and I felt it was very, I had to be very, one genre there. And I found that after writing a lot and almost giving up, I decided to write the book I wanted to write, and that was Garden Spells. And it was a combination of everything I liked to read. And that's when my career started, when I stopped trying to box myself into something and instead opened myself up to everything I like to read.
I have a similar story. My first novel was also a romance, under the pen name Nicholas Sparks. It was the Notebook. It's how I've written this string of much less successful novels. It's given me the financial stability I needed to do that. So I mentioned, but I do want to say about genre is a lot of times people don't realize, I've got a number of friends who write various genres, and romance especially, it's like having to hit these marks. I mean, it is a lot of pressure because readers know what they want, they know what to expect, and it is bringing creativity with a real sense of pressure to it. Is that what you found with your first book?
It was, for sure, because I loved reading. I read romances all throughout my teen years. I just found that it was harder than I thought it would be to write them because it was a certain part of my voice, but not all of my voice. And so I think it felt only part of me. And I think in romance, and I love romance, I think there is an expectation, there is a certain readability to them that readers expect, and that's why readers read them.
Mm-hmm.
It's because they're comforting and they're uplifting. And I wasn't really good at just doing romance.
Yeah.
I tried. I really did try.
Yeah.
I got that one book published, and I sent in, I deluged Harlequin with books after that, and they're like, no. That was sort of the universe saying, Sarah, you need to, change your path a little. Like, no, universe, no, do this. But it turned out to be the way it was supposed to be. It was the journey I was supposed to take.
Yeah, and it's so interesting. I feel like as writers, we all kind of end up writing toward our talents, even if we don't want to. We really want to do this one thing, and we do it for a day at the desk, and then we just kind of unconsciously find our way back to what we do.
Following the market is not what a writer should be doing. You should be following your voice.
Sure, following your voice. Well said. So, speaking of voices, perhaps disembodied voices, can we talk about the role of ghosts? Don't like that segue there, or what? I mean, I'm pretty proud of that. If there's nothing else you remember from what I did tonight, remember that. Can you talk about the role of ghosts in this book and the gravity they bring to it? I mean, this book does have these magical elements to it, but it's also got a lot of heaviness to it, and the presence of these ghosts lend it that. So can you talk about the ghost on the page and maybe even kind of how you might have been working through your own ghosts when you were going to the page?
Right. When I first started writing Other Birds, this was before my mom got sick and before my mom and my sister passed away, so I was having some trouble figuring out where it was supposed to go. I had Zoe as the character. I had a young woman character coming to South Carolina. I knew that much, and I knew the setting, but I was having trouble from that point on. It was probably 1 or 2 chapters in when I realized that Mac, the chef, was haunted. And I thought, well, if he's haunted, maybe there are other ghosts in the story. And so I actually stopped writing those first few chapters, and what I did was I wrote all of those ghost stories at once. And so basically what's in the book was what I wrote, 6 years ago now. I divided it up so that it anchored the story more. But I wrote the ghost stories before the deaths of my family. And then I went back to them after my mom and sister passed away, and I found that I had a whole new perspective on what it was like to be haunted and what it was like to have your mother figure is still with you, even if you don't know it. I liked the idea that there were mothers still around you, protecting you, wanting to still be near you. And so I think, although I had the idea, I think it became more poignant when I picked it up again.
This book feels a little different to me than your others. On a very basic level, it looks different. The jacket is very different than your others. I think the jacket is so beautiful. It is such a beautiful jacket. And it's written a little bit differently, and the marketing has just been incredible. Does this book feel different to you? Does this time feel different to you? Because it's easy to be like, another book, but this one just feels different to me.
I think it is different because I'm different. I think I am a different person. I am a different writer. I've learned a lot of stuff I didn't want to learn, and as hard as that was, it sort of makes the emotion of what a writer writes richer. It still has the elements of my other books. I can't not have food in it. I can't not have a relationship in it. But it is, I think just the short answer it's different because I'm different. And I think just as we grow as human beings, and if we keep writing, our books are going to, change with us. They're going to mature with us. I will never in a million years let anyone see the book I wrote when I was 16. And Dad, I'm going to task you with destroying it. If I die, you need to find it and burn it, okay? But the books I've written lately, I'm okay with people reading because I've gotten better at it. And I think you can't not get better if you keep working at it.
Yeah, I agree. We would love if y'all have some questions for Sarah. There were note cards that went around. If you haven't had a chance to write your question down yet, we've got some folks coming through. You can pass your question down the aisle. If you want to clip a $5 bill to it, that's fine. Some of y'all might have been raised Southern Baptist like I was. If there's not enough note cards in it, we might pass it back around. Y'all might have grown up in that kind of church. We'll see. But while that's happening, and I want to say also that Sarah is gonna continue to sign. So if you didn't get your book signed before the discussion, she's going to be, when you go out, take a left, and she's going to be at the end of the hall down there. You'll be able to see her, and you can get books from Malaprops. And I want to thank Malaprops for being here. They are such a great resource. When I came to Asheville in the 90s, you went downtown for a couple of reasons, to buy drugs and go to Malaprops. And now all you can do is go to Malaprops. And I'm glad to see that part of downtown is still kind of weird. But while those questions are being passed around, I want to ask Sarah, you're a UNC Asheville alumnus, which I've said several times, with a degree in literature, as am I, and now I teach here. And I have to ask you about UNC Asheville and how your experiences here led to your writing practice and your career. And if there were any professors that stood out in the writing curriculum that spoke to you.
Definitely. I remember freshman English 101, freshman year, Rick Chess. And I remember writing a story that he really liked, and he said, there's something called the freshman writing competition. You should enter this story, and I did. And honestly, that's the first money I ever made from my writing. I made $50. I think I was second place in the freshman writing competition. So thank you, Rick Chess, wherever you are. Let's see, Merritt Mosley. I always loved Merritt Mosley. I remember he was writing my senior thesis. I wrote on Alain Roquelet and the French New Novelists. And I'll never forget this. I was struggling to finish this book and turn a book. It felt like a book. A senior thesis and turn it in on time. And I know I rushed that ending. And to this day, I still have that paper. And it says, this is pretty good paper, Sarah, but the ending was like you had to catch a train somewhere. So I always remember Merritt Mosley telling me that. But the late Dr. Rackham, Jeff Rackham, and we've talked about this before. I didn't know what magical realism was until I took that class of his, and it opened up this whole new world. It wasn't something I thought about writing until much later, but I had that foundation from that class. Particularly I Am One of You Forever, but also The Passion by Jeanette Richardson. And there was another one, I can't remember. But The History of the World in 10.5 Chapters was a book from his class. So as a whole, UNCA took someone who did not know what she wanted to do. I love to write and never considered it as a career. And, I've said that, UNCA taught me the difference between floating and flying. Here I am floating, not knowing what to do. I graduated and then I flew. So and I'll always be grateful to UNCA for that.
Oh, that's beautifully said, Sarah, especially for a book called Other Birds. So we have some questions coming in. This is Faith. She's one of my students. Well done, you get an A. Just for tonight. The first question is from Robin, who's also actually one of my students. Actually, only my students get to have questions answered tonight. Robin writes, Sarah, one of your more famous quotes is, how we see the world changes all the time. It depends on our mood. I love this idea. Can you expound upon this thought a minute, please?
That, I believe, was from The Girl Who Chased the Moon, I believe. That quote came from, having a really bad day and thinking it's the end of the world because something did or didn't happen. And then you get a good night's sleep and you wake up in the morning and it's not the end of the world. And the world is still the same and the circumstances were still the same. It's just, it was just a good night's sleep. So the world changes all the time based on our moods, just, based on if we're hungry, if we're with lack of sleep, if we've had a bad day, if the world is actually on its own plane. It does not change. It's our perception of how the world is.
Yeah.
So that's where that came
from. Yeah, absolutely. We got a comment and a question. Sarah, we love you. We love your ability to take complex subjects and use mysticism to make things lighter and brighter. Is there an author or writer who calls to you, who you admire in their synergy of genres?
I have to say that early Alice Hoffman is probably, I'd say Fred Chappell in terms of magical realism in the Southern setting. But when I first read Alice Hoffman, her early works were very romantic. So she took this magical literary aspect and made it so accessible by putting a level of romance in it. And so I will always be grateful when I picked up, I think it was a half-price book at Books A Million. It was Alice Hoffman's book, and I thought, well, this looks interesting, and it changed everything for me. So I think the simple answer is thank you, Alice Hoffman.
Mm-hmm. And I want to say Fred Chappell as well, who you mentioned a couple of times. I Am One of You Forever. It's a story collection, novels and stories set over in Canton, written by a native of Western North Carolina. It's one of the most brilliant books I've ever read.
Read that last line and then turn the book over and look at the title, and it's like the world is never again. It's like it makes you want to be a writer. It makes you want to do something great, because just that. What is I Am One of You Forever? You read that last line and you get chills. So
yeah, and it shows you that being from a place that a lot of people see as a no place, you can be a writer. I'm from Gastonia. He was a writer from Gastonia. He's from Canton. I think it is one of those emboldening books for a young writer to encounter and have that invitation.
That's absolutely right.
People are always talking about beach reads, and I don't like the beach. What are some good mountain reads you would recommend? That's the best question I think I've ever gotten at a literary event. What are some mountain reads, Sarah?
It needs to be a whole new thing. The mountain reads, not the beach reads, but the mountain reads.
That'll be a new section in Malaprops. I don't know where Stephanie and Katie and Brian are. Mountain reads.
Oh my goodness, mountain reads, local authors. Gosh, can I do a plug for The Sugar Queen, which takes place in the mountains of North Carolina? I think they are probably beach reads, mountain reads. I think it's probably the same thing in terms of you want to take something with you when you vacation. I think probably the difference is your books don't get wet.
Yeah.
Which is a plus. But the very first thing I thought was Cold Mountain, but everyone knows that one. But mountain reads, I'm going to use that. That should be that should be like the new thing on the back of the book. Yeah.
When you come to the mountains, it feels like you come to ponder, and Cold Mountain is a very ponderous novel, whereas the beach, you go to, kind of forget your problems for a little while. And you can't do that when you read Cold Mountain. There are a lot of problems in that book.
So mountain reads are more lofty because of
Maybe
the
so,
elevation.
yeah.
Okay.
Raise your eyes to the mountain.
Yeah.
Oh, Brokeback Mountain, sure, there we go. Brokeback Mountain. So this person says, thank you so much for all of your work. Will you consider revisiting the most popular Sunday short story posts and completing them in a collection or novella format? You better answer this one carefully. These are such a joy to read. I appreciate how you hold space for your followers to interact with you on this.
That has been one of the biggest surprises of the last couple of years. My short stories, for those of you who don't follow me on social, on Facebook, I post these micro stories called SAA, Short Stories Sunday, in which I just write a couple of paragraphs and invite people to continue the story. And I did it just to keep the creative muscle going when I wasn't writing. And so it has been, I'm humbled, and it has been an incredible experience to have readers come up to me and say, your short story Sundays, I love your short story Sundays. So I appreciate that beyond measure. You have no idea. I never thought of it until readers started asking me. And I percolate. I think it has been discussed, but the whole idea of having a photo with accompanying these short stories, there's a whole right issue to photos. So if I ever publish something, it would be photo-less. But I am percolating, and I am thinking about it, and I am grateful that you actually read them. So thank you.
This question is pretty straightforward. Did you write a lot during COVID? What was that experience like for you as a creative person?
I did. I actually finished Other Birds during COVID. My mom and my sister died 6 months before COVID hit, and so I was already getting back into the swing of things, and it was, couldn't do anything else. You were at home, so I wanted to finish the book, and that sort of made me sit down and do it. But it wasn't as easy as I've often said. We all think, yay, introverts. We love the pandemic because we got to stay at home, but it wasn't that. In fact, once we could get out in the world, introverts were like, I don't think I want to go out anymore. That's what it felt like. But the pandemic experience for me was actually finishing this book after something even more profound to me and my family happened. So I was actually coming out of something and healing through the pandemic. So it was a fairly unique experience for me writing the book.
Did the feeling of the pandemic and that sense of isolation, that sense of maybe for some of us wanting community, did you feel those themes kind of seeping into the writing of Other Birds?
No, it didn't, but it was only after finishing the book I realized one of the characters was cleaning out the hoarder's house, and she is wearing a face mask, and I described it as a mask that cupped around her face, and because of the pandemic, I know it's an N95, but I'd already finished the book, so I didn't put that in there. I don't think the pandemic actually influenced the book as much as losing my mom and my sister did. I don't know if from this point out my next book would be influenced by it. I talked to a bookseller not too long ago asking her what kind of books she's seeing coming out. You know, what kind of books did people write during the pandemic? And she said a whole lot of self-help books. So I can see that too.
Sure. A couple more questions, and then we're gonna get back to signing and close this out. What is your advice for aspiring writers to help keep the creative juices flowing, even when you don't feel particularly inspired to work?
It's treating it like a job every single day. Write something, even if it's not good, because you can't edit a blank page. You know, if you write something, you can always come back and make it better. But if you don't have anything, then you don't have anything. I cannot remember what the name of the writer was who said that the only unpublished writer out there was the writer who stopped writing. And I think there's truth to that, you keep doing it. And for anyone who does write, whether or not you're published or not, you're a writer. And, you know, it's not just what you do, it's who you are. And so it's something you have to do. And sometimes there's a lot of fear that creeps into that, like, am I good enough, or what's the point of this? And the point is, it feeds your soul first and foremost. And if you follow that passion, if you follow what you love to do, then not only is it gratifying to you, it's actually leading you to a place where you're supposed to go. So never let a day go by that there's just a blank page, that you're not writing a word or two. And I think from there, you have a book.
Mm-hmm. You've got something to work with.
Yeah.
I love, you can't edit a blank page. I've never heard that before. That's yeah, exactly right. And then I'll ask one more question. I think I talked with you about this before. In previous books, you've had a stranger comes to town and something happens, and this time the stranger goes down to South Carolina. How did you choose South Carolina? And the coast of South Carolina.
The coast of South Carolina. My family used to vacation in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. We never went to the North Carolina coast. We always went to Myrtle Beach. My dad did not go to Myrtle Beach. Mom took my sister and I, and Dad stayed home and grew a beard. It always freaked me out when I came home, like, but it has a lot of good family memories. I remember going to Folly Beach in Charleston. I think at one point the whole family actually went down there because Dad knew someone from the newspaper. My dad was a writer of the newspaper. And so I remember the South Carolina coast. I have good memories of the South Carolina coast, and I liked the atmosphere of it. I wanted to maybe not get too far out of the South, but maybe maybe just take a little vacation down to South Carolina. The next book is in North Carolina, so I'm back home, but I take a little vacation.
You didn't want to go back to Myrtle Beach?
I will go back. I will. I'm not going to write a book about it, but I'll write a short story about it.
Well, Sarah, this was an absolute pleasure to be on
Thank
stage
you
with
for
you,
doing
and
this.
a deep honor. We're doing this again together in Winston-Salem in a couple of weeks for a book and author festival they're having, so we're taking this on the road.
It is. We're like a show now.
If y'all want to come down to Winston, that'll be a lot of fun. I want to tip y'all off to a couple of other events we have coming up here on campus featuring writers. We're hosting essayist John Jeremiah Sullivan here at UNC Asheville in November. We've also got Barbara Kingsolver coming to campus this fall. Next semester, we've got Ta-Nehisi Coates coming in the spring, and the United States Poet Laureate Ada Limon will be here in the spring as well. So this is the place for writing, beginning tonight with Sarah Addison Allen and continuing for the rest of the year. So thank you all for coming. I want to also share with you news of the Common Word community read. That book this year is Hell of a Book by North Carolina's Jason Mott. It won the National Book Award last year, and we have 3 events set for the semester. The first event will be Monday, September 19th. I'll be in conversation with the folks from Gold Leaf Literary, which is an author marketing outfit here in Asheville, and we'll be talking about how authors get ready for book tour and how they market themselves and all the perils and potential humiliations involved in that, because part of Hell of a Book is a hilarious send-up of publishing culture. And so that's how we'll open the Common Word Community Read discussion with Jason Mott's Hell of a Book up at the Reuters Center, Monday, September 19th, 7 p.m. You can find out more information, unca.edu/commonword. And I'll be at all of those events, and I hope I see you all there. But Sarah, again, thank you. This was such a pleasure.
Thank you.
And I know you're going to stick around and sign some more
I
books, so
am,
thank you
I
so
am.
much for doing that.
Thank you for doing
And thank you all for coming tonight. Stephanie,